Hey guys, I'm Greg.
And I'm Ashley.
And this is the Living and Learning Podcast. On this podcast, we speak with fascinating guests to uncover how they've experienced life change by crossing cultures,
Crossing borders,
and expanding their worldview.
So, let's dive in.
Welcome to the Living and Learning Podcast. We're so glad you're here. I got to interview an Ecuador alum, and I am excited for you guys to hear from Tiffani Ho today.
Yeah, great conversation that you have with her. You guys really talk about her life before her semester abroad and what she thought about life. And then as you get into her experience abroad, here quite a few highlights from her semester. But then a good amount of your conversation really camps out on how those 3.5 months set her up for both relationships post semester abroad, but also career. It gave her boldness and confidence. And so she tells some amazing stories and people that impacted her there. So really good conversation. Excited for us to jump right into it.
Let's do it. All right, we are here with Tiffani Ho, and I am so excited to have you today, Tiffani. She was spring 2018, so it's been a few years since she's actually been to Ecuador, but she's one of our alum, went to Azusa Pacific, and I'd love for you to share a little bit about what you do now. Like, what does life look like, Tiffani, today?
Well, hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be back. It feels like it's so fun to reminisce and talk about just my experience. But yes, I am now I work as a social media marketing manager and also a influencer manager as well. So I did go and pursue the things that I studied in college. Yes, I know. I feel like a win.
That is such a win. Actually using your major.
Yes, exactly. So I'm so lucky. But yeah, I feel like now that's pretty much what I do for work. I'm still very much, I live where I grew up in. I grew up in SoCal, so I still live in SoCal. I'm still very involved in the church, which has been quite a journey. And I think that's about it. Yeah, I feel like overall it's been a good solid 4 years since I've been back in Ecuador, or at least when I was a student in Ecuador. So much has changed, but I think a lot of it for the better.
Awesome. Wow. Thanks, Tiff. We are also in the presence of a fellow podcaster.
Oh my gosh.
At one point you started your own podcast.
I did.
What is that about?
So actually after Ecuador, I was actually had one semester left in college, which that's important to know of how my experience went in Ecuador because it was my second to last semester. But when I was finishing school, my post-grad transition was just so difficult. And I think most people go through that transition. It's really difficult for other people. And again, I graduated a little bit early. So it was really weird for me to be back at home, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, but still see my peers in school. Yeah. And they were still doing all the fun things that college students do, but I was not a part of that. And so I had the idea to kind of launch a podcast and kind of talk about my experience with one of my close college friends. And we kind of just talked through lots of topics about, vulnerability. We talked about friendships, long distance friendships. After you graduate college, you're thrown into a lot of different situations, especially with relationships changing. And so we talked a lot about that. We talked about a variety of things, even career. We talked about just different ideas that were happening around just in the political area of, in the States. And so we just talked about a lot about everything.
That's awesome. What is it called?
It's actually called the Mature Podcast. Okay. We're not launching more podcasts. Mature? So it was kind of like a joke. It was we're two post-grad students trying to mature in the real world. So this is all our opinions, and it was really fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, for you all, we are going to do Ecuador Plus today is what we've called this podcast. And basically, it's going to talk about Tiffani's experience within the program and how it's affected her post leaving Ecuador. So one of the big things within our program that I love to see is life change and how our semester is so intentional and how it impacts students. And so I think that is something that we'd love to capture today through Tiffani's story. So as you think back to Tiffani pre-Ecuador, what would you describe your life like?
I think, okay, to be really, really honest, I feel like I was very naive, but also arrogant. I was like, you know, when I was going into the program, I was almost done with college, right? And so I'm like at the peak of my college experience. I'm like, I got the college down. I'm like so ready for I'm somewhat ready for what's for life after college. And you just kind of have a sense of like, you know, you're like a young adult, but you're like not really a real adult. And so you kind of feel, or at least I felt I felt like a good sense of like what was going on. And I think I was in general very open to a lot of new things, but I did feel like a sense of like, oh, I know what's going on. Yeah. Like, I got this. Like, I can figure out what's going to be next. Anyone can throw anything at me, but like, I know what's best. You know what I mean? And I think when it comes to like even with faith, right? Like I actually didn't grow up in like a Christian like home. I grew up as a Catholic. Okay. But like even after 2.5 years of being at a Christian school, I was like, okay, I kind of understand the lingo. Yeah. I kind of understand the culture. And it felt, honestly, I can look back and say in hindsight that it was kind of very performative, where I just got used to what life looked like in college. And so before I went to Ecuador, I feel like that was like a really good glimpse. But again, I was just young. Like I was like 20 when I went to Ecuador.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to be in Ecuador. Yeah. And one of the questions I want to throw at you is, what do you think growth looked like in Ecuador?
So I think because of like, I can look back and say like, okay, I was like a little bit naive. I was like a little bit arrogant. I was a little feisty, and I was like ready to take on the world. I think growth for me in Ecuador looked a lot like, one, taking the time to be kind to myself, give grace to myself. Because I think one of the big things that we learned during my semester in Ecuador was this idea of masks.
Okay. Right? What do you mean by that?
Like masks as in Lauren did a whole series on how people in general, like we try to be performative in society, and we oftentimes approach new people or just people in general with a facade.
A false self or something?
Mm-hmm. And throughout the whole semester, as we continue to talk about this from a biblical and spiritual perspective, you know, it was really ingrained into us that, you know, God made you to be who you are. And if you don't allow people to see that, they can't really love you for who you are. They just love your mask. Yeah. And that was something that was honestly just so like heartbreaking for me, because I think it really revealed to me how much I was performing and how I wasn't allowing people to really see my true self. Yeah. And that's something that, like, you know, I was like in college, so I'm still learning a lot about myself, but growth in that sense really looked like, okay, peeking behind the curtains of like, who is Tiffani? Yeah. What does she care about? Why does she care about those things? And how does that relate to the people around me? And how can I be better at that? So I took a lot of time in Ecuador to really sit with that. And I think you honestly don't really have a choice when you're in Ecuador. You're just stripped like so many of the things that give you identity when you're back at home in the States. You don't really have that luxury of claiming that as your identity when you're in Ecuador.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Yeah. Drop the mask. If you were to describe your Ecuador experience in 3 words, what would be your 3 words?
Okay.
Okay.
That's a lot to ask. Okay. I would say the first and foremost is community. Like, that is like one word to describe it. Like, you're just really immersed into a really great support system in Ecuador. So I think that's for sure. Like, I think if any students have gone through it, they can say that for sure. Like, that's number one. Yeah. The second one is full. It was like a very full experience. Okay. I feel like not only do you get the experience of excursions, right? Like for my semester, at least, we went to Machu Picchu.
You guys were the first semester to go there.
Yes. It was crazy.
Was it worth it?
It was so worth it.
Okay.
So worth it. So it's like kind of cool where you get like a 2-in-1 trip, right? Because you get to go to Ecuador and Peru. So kind of cool.
See in Peru too.
Yeah, exactly.
You're lucky.
So yeah, Machu Picchu, you get to visit Galapagos, which, come on, like that is like, what? How many people get to say they get to go to Galapagos?
I do.
Yeah.
I've been there.
Me too. Galapagos, what else? You get to visit the jungle. You get to hike a volcano. Really, you just get so many cool excursions within the program itself. But on top of that, there was also a lot of things that you get to learn spiritually. And also you get the experience of getting to be with people relationally. You get to build relationships. You get to learn about who you are. You get to learn about people around you. You get to learn a different culture. You get the education within the culture. So it was just overall very full experience. Wow. And then probably the last word, I was thinking about this for a long time. Okay. And I feel like
What's it gonna be?
I feel like this, it's maybe, I think this is very relevant to me, so I don't know what other people would say, but I felt like it was a very unraveling experience. Okay. Right. I think, again, you just are, when you're a student during the program, you don't really get the luxury of holding on to certain identities, as in like what I mean when I say that is I think we oftentimes, especially when we're in college, we identify ourselves with like the sports we play, the job we have, the people who are around us, friends, families, and we get a lot of these things that define us. Yeah. But when you're in Ecuador and you're away from everybody for so long, for 3.5 months, and you're immersed into a different culture and you don't get to rely on those things to like quote unquote define you.
Yeah, what do you do?
Yeah, what do you do? So I think the word unraveling was really good because I think it allowed me to see my life almost back in the States through like a very objective point of view, or at least as objective as you could make it. And I think it opened out something in me to just see those parts of me. So when I came back to the States, it allowed me to heal relationships. It allowed me to approach life in a different way, mostly just more confidently and more boldly.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Now, you've kind of touched on it's being a full experience, having the community life, and also the unraveling time for you. Would you have like a moment in your semester that could give us maybe a closer look at the experience that you had?
Yes. There are so
but maybe
many.
There's a lot of moments.
There's so many moments. I can talk about so many, like, it was just classic, you get sick while you're whitewater rafting, all those fun moments. Raining, like having it rain in Machu Picchu, you don't get to see the view, but you get to see the view after. Yeah. There are so many fun moments, obviously, on the excursions, but I think if I get to pick like a particular moment, I think it was really my experience getting to know the staff members. Okay. Most importantly for me, I got the luxury of really getting to spend time with Janelle, which if anyone goes to Ecuador, Janelle is such a...
Yeah, she's awesome.
She is a pillar of the community there. Yes. And I really leaned in and I got the chance to do a one-on-one Bible study with her. While I was...
your idea?
Yes, it was. So the staff members are so open and they're so willing to step into whatever you're going through. But I think one of the things that really made my experience the way it was I pursued relationships with the staff members, and I got the chance to really spend that time with Janelle one-on-one, which, again, was open to everybody. But I think I really wanted to take that time, and I wanted to learn about Bible. I wanted to learn more about Janelle. I wanted to really just sit in that community with her. And those are the best moments I have. It looked a lot like going to different coffee shops. It looked like going to spend time at her house and cooking meals with her and really spending that one-on-one time. And honestly, it was probably one of the more special moments because it allowed me just to be known and seen in a different way that other people didn't get to see when I was in Ecuador.
Wow, that's awesome. Hang out with Janelle.
Yes, absolutely. If you want to have a great time, hang out with Janelle.
That's where it's at. It's been 4 years since your semester abroad, which is wild to think about.
I know. It feels like literally yesterday.
Yeah. But as your 4 years have kind of flown on by, how would you say that your experience in Ecuador has impacted maybe your last 4 years? And this is where we get into the Ecuador plus, because this is post-Ecuador. That's your plus part.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I think for me, I think now looking back in the last 4 years, I think the biggest thing that really changed my life after visiting Ecuador was really just seeing life through a very different lens. Yeah. I think I have become more open to just not seeing my worldview as in like just in the United States, but I get to see the world fully and understand that there's so much outside of me that I won't ever get to experience, but it helps me to be more informed. Yeah. So I think that impacts the way I then interact with other people, with other cultures, people who have different opinions. I think it just allows me just to be relational in a whole new way that I don't think I would have learned if I didn't go to Ecuador. But I think overall too, I think I am just the type of person who has grown to be more bold and confident in the choices that I make, especially now that I'm learning to be an adult. Yeah. I feel like I am more bold when it comes to making even professional decisions. Like even doing the work that I do now, I was an employee, then I switched over to become a freelancer. And that transition is also like just very scary. Making professional decisions is overall just really scary. Like that's your livelihood. Yeah. But I think because of my experience in Ecuador, because I was already so, like when I was 20 and I was deciding whether or not I wanted to go, I was so nervous. Yeah. And I had no idea what life in Ecuador was going to look like, but I leaned into it and it ended up being better than I expected. So when I go out into the world now as an adult, I am a little bit more fearless, just a little bit. Right. Not that I'm not scared completely. I'm still scared. Yeah. I literally have a mental breakdown about work, every once in a while. But in general, it allows me to be more confident because I'm like, okay, if I experience something that was like difficult but also scary, but it ended up being really great in the end, then this could also happen with work. I feel like I just feel more just more confident in knowing that I had that experience and I can operate in this world a little differently.
Well, I feel like if you go back to what you were starting our time with is taking off that mask of the false self. That's a huge thing.
Yes.
Is being who you are. Yes. So it's awesome that the Ecuador experience kind of enlightened that in you to be able to live into really who Tiff is.
Yes.
I think one of the cool pieces that I've heard about your life recently is like you still spending time with your resident coordinator who is CK. Shout out.
Shout out to CK.
What has that been like? I mean, walking life with her even post-Ecuador.
Yes. I think the other thing that a lot of people maybe don't think about is like you get lifelong relationships out of your experience. Yeah. You can at least.
It's cool. When I hear students come back, they're like, I'm going to go see my friend now in Virginia. I'm like, that's awesome because you wouldn't have had a friend in Virginia.
Exactly.
Unless you studied abroad.
Exactly. Yeah. Getting connected to people like all over the States and even like still in Ecuador too. Yeah. Just having those connections. I still hang out with my resident coordinator, CK. We've had so many conversations, but she's really become like a really good friend. Like a really good person who can speak into my life because she was going through that experience with me, or she knew who I was while I was studying abroad. Yeah. And she continues to speak into my life. Again, like I feel like one of the best decisions I made while studying abroad was really leaning into relationships with the staff members. Obviously, it's already natural for you to spend time with other students. Like you're going to do these things with them. You're going to be living with them, doing all the things, but really leaning into relationships with staff was something that really changed my experience. And with CK, she lived with me. We got to do one-on-one time together, which is essential as a part of the program. Yeah. They force you to hang out your RCs. It's a great force. And me and CK actually became close because I had the idea of, instead of just going to get froyo every week or whatever, we decided to go and explore different coffee shops all around the city together.
That's cool. There's a bunch of cool coffee shops in Quito.
Yes. If you love coffee and food, dude, it's the best. The place that I love is closed.
Harlan's?
No, it was not. That was CK's favorite. Okay. It was a different one. They're closed, but
don't worry about it. They're popping up new ones that are great.
Honestly, it's hard to find a bad coffee shop in Ecuador. Yeah. I've been to a good chunk of them. I've been to at least 12 while I was there.
That's where they grow the beans. Come on.
I know. And chocolate. Also, if you love chocolate, it's the best place. But yeah, we went to different coffee shops. And so it was so fun to do both where like we're exploring the city together because she hadn't been to some of the coffee shops that we went to. So she was exploring it with me. And then we get to have really cool conversations. And, you know, CK, because she lived with me, she really sat with me through a lot of the things that I was processing, like family stuff, like relationship stuff. She really just like sat with me in it. And because we lived together, it didn't feel weird if I wanted to like go hang out in her room and I'm just venting to her about this thing that the stupid boy did. You know what I mean?
Boys are stupid?
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. That's good. Wow. Well, in closing, if you were to give a student like one thing, like pre-getting down to Ecuador, what would be kind of your thing that you would want an incoming student to know?
Ooh, there's so many. Okay, I would say this is like a very logistical thing. Don't pack too much because you will bring home a bunch of souvenirs. How many bags did you bring? Oh my gosh, I think I brought one big suitcase that you check in, and then a fat backpack. And then also a mini suitcase. Like, I just really went for it. Yeah. And, I ended up having to just toss a lot of the stuff because I need to bring home souvenirs. That's like, hilarious. 3.5 months, you start collecting some things. Okay. So pack light.
Don't pack too heavy.
Yeah, pack light.
Did you get that?
But I think in general, the biggest thing is just stay open-hearted. Like, I understand that studying abroad can be really intimidating, especially if you have never left the country before.
Yeah, I've spoken with those students all the time.
Yeah, luckily at the time that I was studying abroad, I just left the country for the first time, but Ecuador was the first time I was away from home for an extended amount of time. Yeah. And I'm very family oriented. Like, I'm very immersed into my family culture. And so it was really difficult for me to leave. But I think staying open-hearted really allowed me to then step into the experience and really get the most out of it. Not that that's even like, you know, the goal. You don't want to be like, I'm coming here to get everything. But you want to experience it the way, the way, not that it should be, but just allowing the Lord to really just step into that with you. And a big part of that is just staying open-hearted and leaving expectations at home so you can just be surprised about what happens.
I love that.
Yeah.
Wow. Thanks, Tiff. So be open-hearted as you go into your semester abroad. So pumped to have Tiff today with us. We're just grateful for you all. Have a great day.
Thank you, Tiffani, for sitting down with us this week to chat about what life has looked like after your semester abroad. Hey, you can catch us on our next episode as we talk with Grace Grant. She was a past student, and in that conversation, we talk about the intentionality of the people in her program and how that helped her gain a greater perspective of who the Lord is in her life, and then also set a foundation for years to come. So as you just heard from Tiffani, and you can hear in a couple weeks from Grace about the impact of this semester abroad. If you're a student out there who's thought about this, or if you know a student, right now actually would be a great time to consider submitting an application to join us for a semester in Ecuador or Baltimore or Rome, Italy, where we're running these study and discipleship centers. So come join us. Also, the best thing you can do for people to find out about this podcast is leave a review and a rating. So we'd love for you to do that if you got a moment. Thanks a ton for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.